All right, so what we're going to do, we have a PowerPoint, and it's got some basic information. It's got some basic structure to it, and we've kind of divided up the slides on the PowerPoint. So to start things off, I'm going to ask Jan Elmore to come up and start us off with her part.
So if we can go ahead and move to our second slide, Bob. So this is just kind of an overview. We're going to give you some background on what the Transformational Ministries group met and discussed, kind of how those meetings went, and then ultimately what the group came up with as final recommendations. Next slide, please. So how did all this get started? Last year in August, some of our lay leaders, our pastors, met with our district superintendent, Chris Brady, had a lunch and discussed kind of Millbrook's status. And what came out of that lunch and discussion was that Millbrook is generally in a good place, but it's not as great as it could be coming out of COVID. And our superintendent offered Transformational Ministries as an option for us going forward to formally review Millbrook's challenges and opportunities. And they're just an outside party that helps facilitate that discussion and helps guide church lay members through the process of figuring out what to do next. Next slide, please. So the ministry meetings are in September 2022, the council approved to do this, to bring them in to discuss. And the goal of the meetings is clarity to assess reality, life cycle capacity, and potential of Millbrook, a consensus amongst the members of the group to decide what the right path forward is, and coordination to finalize a plan, implement, and decide, okay, this is what we want to do and what steps we need to take to do it. This was created with a diverse group of laity and pastors that met 3 times, twice in November and once in December of last year. And on the next slide, we can see who those group participants are. There was a mix of contemporary, traditional members, members from different backgrounds, different age groups, as well as our pastors. And so these were the people that agreed to participate. More people were asked, naturally, but these are the 19 people that met 3 times and discussed the status of Millbrook. And I will let Jimmy cover the next few slides.
All right, I think it kind of goes without saying that COVID changed us. COVID changed not only us, in our home environments, in our work environments, in our everyday social environments, but COVID changed us in our church environments too. And so what we wanted to do, as opposed to just letting COVID change us, we wanted to be able to manage that change. We wanted to be able to see the things those changes that had been made and see which ones were for the good, maybe which ones were not so much for the good, so that we might be able to move forward as a church that was experienced in these COVID changes and was doing things to continue its ministries here again on this corner, given those changes that we've had. There were some challenges and some questions that we discussed. And again, this group, this Transformational Ministries, was a group it was just kind of a fact-finding, or not necessarily a fact-finding as much as it was just, let's just talk about it. Let's get our feelings. Let's, as Jan mentioned, several, the invitations were sent to all the different types of groups, Sunday school groups, worship groups, men's groups, women's circles groups, to be involved, because we wanted to have as many opinions, we wanted to have many ideas involved in this discussion as we could. We knew that we just couldn't go back to pre-COVID, and that we wanted to move forward and again, thrive again. There were on the slide, there are some of the comments, some of the statements that were made during these initial meetings. Like, we love this church, but, it seems like there's 3 churches. Looking at the different worships. Are we divided? If we are, we're divided. We're not divided by conflict, but we're just separated. We wanted to talk a lot about who our community. If we're going to serve our community, we need to know who that community is. Who is our community that we want to serve, and how do we serve them? How do we reach out? What are their needs? What are the things that we as a church can do to minister and serve our communities? There was a lot of discussion about, like the idea we wanted to had that small church feeling, but we had to do that in a big town. And how would we be able to do that? Looking at the assets that we had within the church, what were our abilities and what were some of our challenges? Bob, if you would. So one of the things that this transformational ministry group suggested that we do is that we look at some of the different areas of our church life, our worship area, our growth, finances, focus, and our capacity. Look at some of those areas and then try to give them a little bit of a gauge or a grade on how we were doing in those different areas. How did this group, and there were probably 25 folks there, give or take, how were we operating? How are we doing with these different areas? And the consensus came out that, in our worship area, we were kind of at a plateau. We could, everyone knows, you go up on a plateau and it just kind of levels off. Are we at that level, or, were we wanting to grow? But we were pretty much kind of at the plateau level. And it was a bit of a challenge. We didn't necessarily think that that's where we wanted to be. We weren't ready to kind of give up that extra energy, extra effort that might be needed to move forward. As far as growth, again, finances, these were all the different areas that we looked at, and it was determined that we had some challenges. We had some challenges to be where we wanted to be, not just where we were, but where we wanted to be. So as far as moving forward. Next slide. I always say I don't do really well with PowerPoints because I always get ahead of the slides, so sorry about that. But this was what I had just mentioned. These were some of the areas, that the group saw, and what, you can see the highlighted areas, what we were talking about would be a challenge, or if we were just kind of at a plateau, or we really need, or if it was really a strength for us. Bob, next one. So with those with those ideas, or those areas that we wanted to be, of course, you always want it to be a strength. You always want those different things to be a strength that we can build on, and that our efforts would be doing good works, using that as a strength. And so that next slide shows some of the ideas. Next, some of the ideas that we might need to focus on. We need to make sure that we have a clear vision and strategy. And Kathy's going to mention just a little bit about that in a second, that clear vision. We need to look for, we want to be very intentional on looking for for things that our community needs. And so we might be able to address those things. But again, that gives you those were some ways that we would strengthen those 5 areas on that. And now Kathy's going to talk a little bit more about some of the recommendations. And again, the group was, an educational group. It was a fact-finding group. It was not a decision-making group, so any decisions would come with church council.
All right. You've already gotten a sneak peek at the final recommendation since the PowerPoint slide's been up there a little bit, but we came out of the group saying, okay, we really need to relook at our mission and our vision for the church. Many of us have been here for a long time and know that we've done this multiple times over the years, but we need to recenter ourselves and figure out, do we have the right mission and vision, or do we need to tweak it and develop something new? We need to look at the fostering of a healthy culture within our church. We need to make sure that all of the people feel a sense of belonging here, not a separation between services, not a separation between groups of ages or whatever, but that we can develop a unity leading to discipleship. One of the things that came out unexpectedly as part of these meetings during these conversations was the consensus, surprisingly, that maybe we needed to move to 2 worship services, and that might help figure out a way that we could better unify the sense of the divide between the 3 services, or simply look at how we can soften those divides. And finally, a sense of community. Who is our community? And we obviously have outreach and mission groups that have already been looking at some of those areas. In backing up on the next slide, just to sort of throw out some of the things that came out in our group session, like I said, this was not part of the expectation, but a lot of people said we need more fellowship between our traditional and our contemporary services. We need more options for Sunday school. We don't cross-pollinate at all between our services because of the timing of them and then the timing of our Sunday schools. So generally only traditional people are in the same Sunday schools, and the same for the contemporary services. We had ways that we could have more studies or more forums or more ways to connect with the sermon series or whatever, and to provide an opportunity perhaps for mixing up a little bit of music or whatever between the services. The next slide said, it simplifies the logistics a little bit on Sundays, certainly for staff. And, the traditional being at 8:30 and then again at 11, if it were one service, it might engage some additional energy. And that there could be, better caring for each other. We know that we care for each other, but we don't always know the people in the other services, and we don't have opportunities to realize the needs that would give us the opportunity to reach out and care for our laity and our pastors. And then certainly an increased sense of unity and opportunity for better welcoming new people. The next steps on the last slide here have already sort of been put into motion. We said, okay, if we want to look at mission and vision, we need to put a task force together. We all know that we're good at doing that, and the task force actually meets this afternoon for the first time. So that is already starting to proceed. And secondly, a second task force to look at the belonging and discipleship aspects, to look at that topic of the 2 services and or other opportunities. In each case, both task forces will be reporting back to council in the next few months as they finish their conversations and try to develop what is a go-forward recommendation. And as I mentioned already, the outreach and mission people have we already have a number of those groups that are already looking at outreach and mission, and that will dovetail, hopefully, once we get a little bit further down the road into the recommendations coming out of those first 2 groups. I think we are certainly absolutely willing to take questions if you have any. We obviously don't have the resolution on all of this at this point, but we do have, we sat through these meetings, and several of us have given this presentation more than once. So, maybe we'll have heard the question at another group that we could answer yours, or we'll do the best we can if you do have any questions.
How will the 11 o'clock work for Spiel about coming in at 8:30?
I don't think the answer to that question is the timing on all of this has not yet been set. It hasn't, nobody has said, oh, well, we're going to get rid of the 11 o'clock, or we're going to get rid of the 8:30, or, oh, 9:45ers, you now have to come at 8:30. None of that has had the conversation. That's why that second group is going to be looking at what is the best way to do this, and at the same time, to get the opportunity to, I use the words cross-pollinate, but to have traditional people and contemporary people have the opportunity to be in Sunday school together, or in learning together, or in forums together. And so all of that will be part of that work that they do in that committee. But yeah, I think all of us are a little bit stressed on, if I'm used to sleeping in, do I have to get up? Or if I am used to getting up early and being done, will that stretch my morning out? None of that has been answered yet. And so we all appreciate that that's a concern and a thought of most people, but it is something that will have to be dealt with as the group meets.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I noticed in this consensus to move into the two services, you said with discipleship opportunities in between that. Can you define that a little?
Well, it could be just something where we'll move the coffee time, maybe just a time for fellowship. When we had the recent special Sunday school class that Ty led, right? Ty led that Sunday school, and it was like 30 people were in that small classroom. We had to move the actual classroom. So there was a group of people who wanted to have special Bible studies or special times for that. So that would be discipleship for for them. And like as I mentioned, we all learn from each other. We learn from others, our other experiences. So having that mixture just kind of continue to mix will help us be better disciples. Will help us know more about our faith and how we might be able to benefit others.
That was certainly one of the best things that's happened at Millbrook since I've been here. But if we do that, it requires somebody with some strong leadership skills and some time to devote to preparing for that. And it could go on with sermon series or whatever, but that was such a joy to me to hear voices from other places than I had long ago.
And it would be a time where both services, theoretically, both worship services would have a special block there that would be for Sunday school. And you wouldn't be able to say, well, you ought to come to our Sunday school, and, well, I'd like to go to... You would have the opportunity to attend, have a time for a Sunday school or special disciple program. Again, this all needs to be worked out. The timing on it needs to be worked. We understand there's ideas about if now my service is 30 minutes later, how am I going to adapt to that? And there's lots of ideas. We get that, but it's 30 minutes later or 30 minutes sooner. But it does give us the opportunity to. Well, wasn't it great to see that room full? Great to see this room full when we have that next meeting that we'll have in here for the new sermon series. So, and plus, they are looking for volunteers that would help out with the belonging and discipleship team, if you would. If you're interested, that's not meeting today, but they are forming that team now. Christy and Aunt Kristen are they're going to be talking about forming that team now, right? And they're looking, you're ready to write down names for volunteers. Okay, they are looking. Yeah, they are looking for volunteers that would help. Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed my Sunday school class, but I also
Mm-hmm.
just had two
Sunday school classes.
Sunday school classes.
Right.
I wanted to do the other, but I don't have to leave.
Right. Well, I don't think anybody's going to be asking anybody to leave a Sunday school class, or that's, well, the timing may be different if that was approved, but nobody's asking anyone to leave a Sunday school class. Yes.
Okay, so one thing that really has been on my mind is about children and the youth. Okay, so right now, if a family goes to the 9:45 Sunday worship, and the parents might want to be involved in the Sunday school, so they have to choose between worship and Sunday school. And we are having a struggle to try to find volunteers to teach Sunday school. And so to me, the biggest worry ought not to be what is my schedule now for her, but what schedule would give us the resources, the volunteers that we need to work with these children and young people, and still give me a time for worship.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday school with the youth is always been a problem, so when Brandon was back. They used to go in Sunday school and teach themselves sometimes, because it was not, so that goes way back.
Well, having the possibility of having a time slot that didn't conflict with the contemporary service and didn't conflict with the traditional service, that's kind of one of the benefits that we were looking at with this. That way you would have people who could either stay after worship or come before worship and have that middle time slot that they could attend Sunday school, they could volunteer to teach Sunday school, or participate in some of the other events that we have. So that's, again, there's everybody. I think everybody, when they mentioned that, having two services, I know my mind went into, okay, how are we going to time it? It's not for me to decide, it's for us to decide. But is there a way that we would be able to do that and benefit the congregation without making too much of a change? But more importantly, that we would be moving forward in this post-COVID environment where we might be able to go out and see that community and serve more and having growth, not for growth's sake, but having growth because we are bringing more folks to Christ through this building that we have here on this corner of Millbrook and Lake Forest Road. That's what we're looking to do. What can we do to increase our assets, increase our ability to grow God's church here, not for growth's sakes, but have growth be a benefit of those things that we are doing that would please God.
I think the other point, which is obvious here, is that the reason that we're having these kind of get-togethers is not just for us to feed you the sense of where we are and what's been going on, but to get feedback so that the various task forces that are going to be talking about mission and vision and talking about the belonging, the service timing questions, can get the feedback of the various issues that are important to the people in the congregation. So I think that we certainly don't have all the answers on how that will come together, but your feedback is really important for those groups as they move forward.
I think the timing and all of the different structures should reflect from the vision.
Somewhat?
Should reflect from the vision.
Oh, right.
Are you saying like the vision should guide us? Yes. Amen to that.
I haven't heard, as far as volunteers. I hadn't thought about volunteers. I knew that there was an issue with, say, children's and youth Sunday school, but having volunteers able to do that too and do their worship, pulling it all together. It's going to be very important to have everybody's ideas on that before any kind of decision would be made from church council. But we are still looking for those opinions. We're looking for the volunteers that can come and not only give those ideas and discussion points here, but also do it within that team setting, so that team would be ready to take information to council. Sir.
I like the way that this conversation's been handled. One of the things that, I would just commend all of you for doing such a good job with this, but I hope that we say to our congregation in every single service is to hold your opinion very lightly. Because we could try the very best in the world, but there could still be somebody that gets so upset about this that they decide that they want to leave. And so all of us, especially the people who are more mature in their relationship with Jesus, of just holding your opinion so lightly that, if the pastors and the leadership of the church said that we're going to move worship to Saturday at 9:50 p.m. and if we thought that it was the right thing for the church, that we would all be willing to do it. Not that that's going to ever happen. That if we could all hold that lightly, hopefully we could create a culture where people are willing to back down from that a little bit. And so I think that's kind of in the air here, but I do want to say it.
I think that's an excellent point. And somewhere along some of the meetings that we had, nobody's going to probably be 100% happy, but that's okay, because we will have come to a place after gathering voices, and that we will also, when we get to that place, we will realize that the times, all the other details that go into this, at the end of the day, as Sharon already said, we will be delivering the vision and the mission that we believe is important for Millbrook United.
I don't think we're looking at taking anything away. I think we're looking at enhancing what we have, improving what we have, so that we might be better prepared to deliver God's word out there in our community. Yes, ma'am.
Sort of the echo Aaron sentiment, which is something we say at work a lot when we think about change. Any change is painful, right? So even if your change is good, it's still painful, but if we think of it as a pivot, it doesn't mean that's always going to be the direction we go either, right? We might try some things and fail miserably, and that'll be okay, because you have to fail to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So we can just not be afraid, echoing our message from this morning. So we're going to pivot in a couple of places, and some of it will be good, some of it will be uncomfortable. Well, some of it will be uncomfortable growth, and some of it will be uncomfortable, like, oh, this didn't work the way we thought it was going to. But if we can remember that we're together and what our vision and mission is, it makes it okay to fail and okay to try.
I think that's a good point. Again, holding opinions lightly, that's a good point. So this is not going to happen tomorrow, the next day, or next week. Okay, but decisions aren't going to be made. So we are going to be talking more with more folks. We're going to be looking at these teams. This may be in months. We may 2 months from now. So it's not something that is absolutely going to happen. Lots of time to give opinions. Lots of time to think through this and see how it would benefit the whole. It may not. It may cut into my sleeping time, but if it benefits the whole, then that's a benefit to me too.
But we will make a change. Like, we're not going to sit around and talk about it for years. Just
No, I agree. I was looking at this on.
we could possibly talk about it for years.
I think there are probably some folks who are ready to do more than just talk about it at this point, but we don't want to do that at the risk of not hearing what we need to hear. So, where's that fine line where, okay, let's, shut off conversation, we're ready to go. They will come, and we'll be ready to move on it.
I'll just say really quickly, I'm late, but I started watching The Chosen. I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
started watching The Chosen. I think I'm a little bit late, but anyway, it's fantastic. I would recommend that you do. But something that
good.
keeps sticking out with me is when Jesus says, pretty much every episode, this is messy. And I've just taken that, part of it. It's messy. This work is messy. And it's helped me in my faith journey. I know it's a TV show. I know that. And I keep that in perspective, but it really is helpful when I'm reading the scriptures and I'm able to see that.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Mom's Kitchen later on if you want to hang around. But thank y'all for coming today. We appreciate it.